What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 2 prop and betting stream for the Tour Championship. Gonna get you guys ready for all of your exposure tomorrow with a look at the averages from the golf course, also weather for Friday. We'll talk through the Underdog and Prize Picks boards and some matchups on the sports books, give you an idea of exactly how to play tomorrow. But any sort of questions, feel free to hit me up in the chat. Looks like we got Rushing Yard, also Ryan down there with a question that we'll get to later. Welcome on in and let's have ourselves a Friday. Thursday ended up being an amazing day for our exposure, ended up being a +9 unit day on the prop side of things, whether it was our exposure from last night, 4-0 on the pick'em props we pointed out. Couldn't quite get the 2-ball to cash for us. That was, I guess, the one downside of today. But anytime you have nearly a 10 unit into the green, you can't complain about it whatsoever. So course read was there, played a lot easier than a lot of people were expecting, but not unexpected if you watched this live stream last night. So hopefully everyone out there was able to take advantage of all of the exposure that they entered and is ready to get after it for the next day of action. So like I said, we're going to go through all of those things, but anything on top of it that you're curious about, don't be shy to let me know in the chat. But first things first, let's look at the averages from today. So scoring average was -2.73, which was actually even easier than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to play easier than a lot of people thought it would, in like the -1.25 to -1.75 range. But with them coming out and giving preferred lies to these players, that made up that stroke difference right there. So we'll have to see if they go with that for round 2. They did get a bunch of rain just after play ended today. In fact, at least if the weather app is correct, it says an inch of rain fell on East Lake Golf Club. If that's the case, it probably will be lift clean in place for the next round. But until we know that for sure, I'm not really comfortable saying that I think the scoring average is going to be -2.75. Again, I would maybe give 2 scoring averages because I think it really makes that much of a difference at this style of course. If they play without lift clean in place, it probably does play -1.75 to maybe -2. If they go with it, then the same thing as today, right? It probably will play that -2.75 to maybe even a -3 scoring average. But until we know whether it's lift clean in place or not, we're not going to be able to say that for sure. But the one average, or I guess the few categories that aren't going to move as much, would be your birdies, your fairways, and your greens. Those likely aren't going to change as much based on lift clean in place. It's mostly this bogey average, which really gets impacted by lift clean in place. So, without lift clean in place, that probably doesn't move that much. But if they do take that away for round 2, that can go up to like 3 bogeys or worse per round. So that's where a lot of that variance is going to come in. But your birdie average would probably still be about 5 per round, even if they ripped it off the course. And then your fairway and green averages, probably not going to move much whatsoever. But the one thing to note with the green average is that they did move up the tee at hole 15 today. Hole 15 normally plays a little bit over 200 yards as a par 3. Today only played 150 yards. So that did contribute to the players hitting a few more greens than maybe usual around this course. So we might want to adjust down the green regulation average just a little bit to kind of account for that, to perhaps around 12.5 per round. But fairway average, going to stay about 9. Like I said, birdie average, probably 5+ again, to give you guys an idea of exactly how this course is going to play. And it's also worth noting that they moved up the tee times for tomorrow. So rather than starting about 11 a.m. local, they're going off at 8 a.m. Eastern time. And the last tee time is at 10:44, which is about 3 hours earlier than what you had for round number 1. So that's to try and avoid some PM showers. But outside of the threat of a thunderstorm towards midday, towards even into the afternoon, the winds aren't really a factor. You've got sub 7 miles an hour for all of the morning. Afternoon looks even calmer than what it is during the first half of play. So while there's a chance that we have a delay tomorrow, and the rain that comes through would only soften up the golf course more. So I don't really think it's that much of an issue. If they go back out afterwards, it's going to be a softer course and pretty much perfect conditions for the rest of the afternoon. So I think the weather is pretty much the exact same carbon copy of what we had for Thursday. The real variance is going to come down to whether they use lift clean in place or not. So I'm personally going to be staying away from bogey lines until we get that news, and even strokes lines until we get that news. But birdies are better, fairways and green regulation props, I don't have that same kind of concern with right now. So I've already entered some exposure. In fact, 6 props I've already gone with on Underdog at this point are all in those 3 categories. So when we get to our exposure here in a second, that's what we're going to be focusing on. It's worth noting that the pin locations did come out. We're not going to go through those here fully on stream, as I want to keep this live stream a little bit quicker. I've got some stuff to get to tonight with some buddies, but the pin locations are easier than round number 1. And you might not expect that after a -2.75 scoring average, but on average, the pin locations are going to be easier than today. So while hole 15 getting moved back might have some sort of effect on that green average, some sort of effect, let's say, on these other categories as well, the easier pin locations are also going to kind of offset that change. So I do think that we're going to see some pretty good scoring. Again, the one real unknown would be with that strokes in the bogey or worse categories because of that lift, clean, and place variance. So because of all of that, let's go through some of the exposure that I've entered. And my first lean was with fairways hit because the average went up quite significantly. It went up to about 9 per round today, so 9 of the 14 being hit by players on average, and that included a lot of intermediates. So there's some rollout towards the edge of these fairways, and when you hit the intermediate, it's as close as you could possibly get to hitting a fairway, but it doesn't count for one. On average, I mean, I don't have the exact number for the field because it's not something I calculate after every single round, but going through all of these players, they on average hit it at least one, I'd have to say, based on the sample size I was looking at. Some players were hitting 2 or 3 intermediates per round. So this average could have been even higher for the field, if not for some of those misses. So if we can find players today that covered this sort of a line at 8.5, 8.5 is going to be the overs that we're looking at, and hit some intermediates in round number 1, then in my opinion, those are some of the best plays to take because they got screwed, especially if they hit like 2 or 3 of those intermediates, more than the rest of the field was getting screwed. And if they were already going over the line, they're already an accurate driver and they're due for some, we'll call it bounce back percentage because of hitting those intermediates, then I think those are some of the best plays that we can take at this point. And because the course got some rain after play ended, I think there's quite a bit of value on these leans. And I know some of these already bumped, so we can take them on Prize Picks if that's going to be the case. There's a lot of value involved on these, so I think it makes sense why we could have seen a bump on some of these sort of props. But let's see if we can find those exact ones I took. So the fact that they're not towards the top has me thinking that there was some sort of multiplier added in. You can see that on the JJ Spawn one. I got that one at even money. Same thing with this Akshay Bhatia. I got him at even money. A Keegan Bradley, and let's see, is it going to be 4 for 4 and all the overs that we took that got bumped? I guess I skipped over one before when I was going through. These are Hovland. Hovland, they just ripped off the board. He was at 8.5, but it's a bunch of these overs on fairways that I like for tomorrow. So let me see if we can get the Victor Hovland one back because he was also 8.5 and maybe even my favorite at that number. So they still have that one ripped off the board, but that was another over that I was looking at. With these multipliers, they're not my favorite plays. I would not play them with those sort of things. But on Prize Picks, we have a lot of these posted without the multiplier. So, for example, if we go over here to this site, and this is not where I got my exposure, but it's not to say that it's not still a good site to go out there and get some of this in there. But like a JJ Spawn, for example, which now has that multiplier on the Underdog side, is posted at 8.5 flat. And I guess a lot of these other guys aren't even posted over here, or they're 0.5 higher. So, for example, Keegan Bradley that I got 8.5 flat is posted at 9 on a Prize Pick. So that's where they're getting that sort of a bump. And, of course, that's value that we secured. Same thing with Akshay Bhatia, right? I got 8.5 flat. Same thing with my Patreon members, but now he's up there at 9. So I guess we should stick to the ones that haven't bumped, the ones that are their true value. So we'll go with the JJ Spawn there. And then let's see if we can find a green regulation over. So the one that I took that we're not going to be able to take right now, unfortunately, is this Cam Young over on greens. So he's at 11.5 flat on Underdog, and he was minus 130 towards the over on Draftkings. So maybe a little bit of line value there. And Cam Young early this year was really struggling. I mean, he sucked for his first 3 months. In fact, he sucked so much that his green regulation percentage is like a number 150 something out of the entire PGA Tour. However, if we look at this field over just the last 24 measured rounds, Cam Young is top 5 at hitting greens regulation. So the 11.5 number, I mean, the average today, just to go back to that, guys, was 12.97 per round. That means that he could lose an entire green to that average and still go over that sort of line. And Cam Young, top 5 player in the category over the last 24 rounds, is one of the guys that I think would beat that average more often than not. So that was why it was a no-brainer at that number. Even at 12, you could argue that it makes a lot of sense because he's top 5 in the field in the category. It is 0.5 higher, but all we have to do is match the field average, get to that 13 mark to go over for us with the push equity at that 12. You can make an argument that there's still value at this 12 mark. So, of course, right, if you're getting these props when they drop and you're getting them at their original numbers, that is the best case scenario. But even afterwards, in some rare cases, there can be some value on those sort of leans. And while some of them have bumped that I've already taken, this Patrick Cantlay one has not bumped quite yet. So Cantlay, I took at 12.5. He is a top 25 green regulation percentage player when you take a look at the stats for the entire year. He's also a player that played particularly well today. He hit 13 of his 18, and that was just by a few fringes that he ended up mixing in. And on top of that, he's a player with elite tier course history around in East Lake. So he's got the season-long stuff working for him. He played well today. He also is a specialist at this specific golf course. And the field average, that's all we need him to do to cover this sort of line, was already at about 13 per round. And when you add on top of that the fact that they got some rain this afternoon just after play ended, I don't think that average is going to drop very much at all. Like, again, 15, that's the big X factor. 15 is that par 3 that has all the water in play that last year they played up for 3 of the 4 rounds. If they decide to move that back, that would be a negative against this. And again, maybe take it down to like 12.75 because of some of the other easier pin locations. But if they don't move it back, right, if they keep it the same, right, that's a possibility as well. We don't know for sure whether they're going to move back that tee box. If they leave it up, I mean, this is an even better value at 12.5 fair greens. So he was minus 125 for his over on books. It's not like it's massive value. Same thing with this JJ Spawn prop. He's minus 125 for his over on DraftKings. So that's why they haven't bumped quite yet, is they're the ones with the least quote unquote in-house value. But both are the same exact plays as a lot of the other ones that I've already taken that have bumped. Like, for example, with the JJ Spawn, he's a top 60 driving accuracy player. He's up there with Debati as an accuracy. I think number 1 out of all the players that we took for driving was Hovland at 8.5. He was like number 40 something on tour in driving accuracy, but everyone else is in that 60 to 70 range. So if guys like Keegan were bumping and we're like minus 140 juice towards the over, then JJ Spawn should be the exact same thing. And in fact, what I liked with Spawn when I was researching him for that lean is that he's gained accuracy to the field in his last 5 starts. A lot of these other players are a bit more sporadic, right? Like they gain more to the field than they lose, but not like Spawn, who's been an absolute machine off the tee lately. So I think that he should be as much value as those other ones. In fact, I project him better than some of those other ones that have already moved. And then with the Cantlay, I mean, they don't have a lot of other elite tier green regulation percentage players even on this board. The only other one that's even remotely close to it would be like a Colin Morikawa at 12.5. And I think that he's also got minus 125 to minus 130 juice towards the over. So I'm okay with both of these leans. That would be a 2.75x payout on those two together, which again, this isn't an exact combination that I played, right? I took 3-leg slips over here on Underdog and I got slightly better lines in some cases, but still 2 leans that I think are solid that are playable at this stage of the week. And to go back to the slate in general, the reason why we're not really going to deep dive strokes or bogeys or worse is that them hitting us with the left hook of no lift clean in place would just be annoying as fuck. I mean, if we wake up tomorrow and they go, you know, we're going to play it down even with the rain in the forecast, I mean, that would make me pretty angry. It would mean that the bets that we took on strokes and bogeys would be pretty much fried right off the bat if we were just assuming that they have that. We don't have to play around with any of that nonsense, right? We don't have to expose ourselves to any sort of a bad break or bad decision-making process on the PGA Tour and what they decide to do if we focus on fairways, greens, and then birdies are better. Because with birdies are better in that category, it's not quite as tied to the lift clean in place. Like, sure, it is helpful to be able to clean your ball in the fairway and set it on a perfect blade of grass when you're hitting on into it, but it's not going to be nearly as impactful as getting those chips up and down around the green. So at 4.5, you have a lot of guys at this number that are, you know, average to below average players. But if you can find an aggressive guy to take for an over at 4.5, all he has to do, kind of like with the fairway lines we're talking about, is have an average day. So while Harry Hall, and I haven't played this one myself yet, so this is the asterisk I'm going to put on this one, but I think there's a chance that I mix this one in. Harry Hall, if you look at the birdie or better percentage stats, he's number 2 on the PGA Tour. I mean, he's as good as it gets when it comes to posting birdies or better. The average was 5.1 per round today. Again, maybe it goes slightly down, ever so slightly down to maybe like 5 per round. If it's 5 per round, he has an average day and he covers for us. That is very reasonable from the number 2 player on tour in the category. So that was one that I was kind of eyeing up before. But in general, that's what I would be looking at with birdies are better. Some of your elite tier players, like except Straka, he's also a top 10 birdie maker. So he would be a player that you'd have to consider for that over at 4.5. But on the books, they don't have them as values towards the over. So it's as if they kind of have it priced in between. At least this is my take of what we see with the sports books, is they don't know whether it's going to be lift clean in place or not. So they're kind of splitting it down the middle. They're going, you know what? I'm not going to price it quite as easy as it should be if it's lift clean in place, but they're also not pricing it as hard as it should be in most cases for if they take away that lift clean in place, which is why I think the value is on these ones like birdies are better, fairways and greens that don't come down to that, because there's still value involved. Like they lowered the fairway average, obviously. Like they would not have these above average fairway guys at 8.5 if they thought the average was going to be 9 per round tomorrow. So that's them thinking that the course is going to get quote unquote harder, but we don't even know if that's actually going to be the case. So that's why I think there's a lot of value on these sports books. And the thing is with the sportsbook lines makers, they don't know golf a lot of, as well as a lot of us do that watch this live stream, as myself, as a lot of us cappers that are breaking this down. There are a lot of them are just stat guys that they really have a bunch of niche sports that are assigned to them. I have somebody that works in trading at a sports book that has kind of over the years given me some information on how they usually run. Some of the bigger sports books will have a dedicated team for the sport, like a PGA team, that sort of thing. But a lot of the medium to smaller ones, and even some of the bigger ones, one of my buddies worked at one of the big three, and even they had guys working on golf projections that, especially during football season, where 95% of their effort was on football instead of golf. So they get things wrong. They're not always in tune with the conditions as much as other people. And I think that they're making a little bit of a mistake, I would say, when it comes to this pricing for tomorrow. So that's going to be the take on the slate from the pick'em side of things. For all the different props that end up playing for tomorrow, you guys can find those on my Patreon page. There's a link in the description of this video /live stream to go out there and join that. Golf prop tiers, what you want to join if you want access to all of those slips. Not only do I post every Underdog and Prize Pick slip as I get to them, but also stat averages and weather for every single round to give you guys your research for every single day of action. So you guys can find that over there. I will go through any of the questions that you've got for me in the chat. And then afterwards, we're going to try and find a matchup to enter. And I was going through the board a bit earlier, and I will admit I did not see that much value myself, but maybe with some of the questions that you've got in chat, we can try and find something to play as a bit of a community play. And if not, then yeah, maybe we don't have exposure from the two ball side, right? We don't ever want to force our hand. We never want to just enter stuff for the sake of it. That is my pet peeve, something that it kind of angers me when people ask me questions like, oh, aren't you going to enter like more slips for this sort of slate? Like, I don't know. I guess if there's value, I'm going to go out there and do it. But I'm not the kind of person that just enters stuff for the sake of it. So we'll see if we can find anything over there. Again, maybe you guys have some ones that were standing out to you. But let's see in terms of the bets you want me to deep dive. So let's go back to Ryan's question. He says, are we looking at greens and reg for the play again? I kind of am. And I know we kind of mentioned that already, but with the softer course, the rain that they got this afternoon, I don't think that they've priced it up quite enough. So I think on specific players, not everyone, that there's going to be some value towards that over. He said, you're not hearing sound on your end for anyone else. It's probably just you. Sound looks good with everyone else, so make sure to check up on that one. Is there any chance I could do a deep dive on Hovland? Would have asked earlier, but you missed it. So yeah, we can talk through Hovland. Let me actually bring up the bet the number stuff so that I can go through those for you. Actually, I already had them up, so I guess didn't have to bring up a second tab, but here you go. So Hovland played pretty decently today, at least from my memory. He gained off the tee, lost on approach, which is a bit of a red flag, but he also could have been a lot better on the greens. So from the stat perspective, it's probably a 5.5 out of 10, but he's a really, really good course fit. His shots gained per round is top 3 out of anyone in the field. And I know the course is a little bit different this year, but he has killed it around this sort of setup. You said you hit a 4-man, a 6-man, and a 2-man. You think Prize Picks got owned today? Yeah, it was a good one for a lot of people for sure, especially if you played positive stance plays. You said, quick oddball question. You said, you don't expect me to say anyone in particular for business reasons, but do I respect any other sites beside my own? It depends what you mean by respect, right? If you're talking about projections wise, then no. Because at least in the golf space, they all post projections that are absolutely ludicrous. They post projections that spend too much, too little compared to the $50,000. So it depends. Like there are certain people in the industry that bet golf that do golf things that I respect. But if you're talking about a whole website or a whole crew of people, yeah, no, they've all got their bad apples, in my opinion. There's faults to all the different sites out there. That's why I run my own site. I mean, I've had offers from sites to join their team, to run their projections, et cetera, that I've had to decline because I wouldn't have full control over that aspect. Like there's been sites that have been like, yeah, you can kind of join and kind of do this, the projections for us for the most part, but not the whole thing. I won't join a site if it's not all my own stuff, because a lot of the stuff out there, I vet it every single week, because if you're doing ownership projections and you're not looking at the rest of the industry, you're doing it wrong. You have to at least have some sort of baseline of what other people are spewing out there. And when I look at it and I throw it through my analyzer, just to get an idea of the fundamentals, whether they're being followed with that set of projections, it's like a 90% fail rate these days. I don't know, it's embarrassing to me. So to answer your question, not really. There are people that I respect on teams, but in terms of whole websites, absolutely not. Cam Young, 11.5 on pick six. Yeah, so I took him on Underdog, but you could play him on pick six. That's the way to do it. How do I rate Goddard and Rose for tomorrow? They both seem to bounce back after rough starts. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's backed up in the stats, but I'm assuming that you're vetting that and getting that from somewhere. So I'll give you that one. And then you said, how do I rate them for tomorrow? I don't know, probably like a 5 out of 10 on both. Neither one was that good stat wise after round one. But I mean, if you're looking at a round two bounce back category and they're popping there, then maybe that's the data point that you use to get to them. So personally, not guys that I'm going to be over the field on or that I'm heavy on for Friday, but I'm not going to give you too much pushback because, like, if you're talking for DFS, I'm not really sure what purpose you're mentioning that for. But if it is for DFS, they're going to be lower owned than the other guys around them because they both kind of suck today. So, this is a time and place for getting to those sort of players. But in terms of like how they rate out, probably around a 5 out of 10. Like, I don't overreact to the round one stats too much. I mean, Rose won an event a couple events ago. So, I mean, he's got decent form heading into this week. And then Goddard up, I mean, he was hot a couple weeks before that. So, yeah, I think both are decent options, but not my favorite, I would say. He said, hey, Luke, you heard me on Bobby Mack fairways yesterday. Dude cooked the fairways today. You were thinking about pairing him with JJ as a two-man. You can do that. I don't think that's the worst bet. He is an above average driving accuracy guy. I will say, though, that he's slightly lower on the driving accuracy list than some of the other players that I've mentioned. So I think he's like number 60. He's in the 60s. He's like 62 or 67, something like that in terms of hitting fairways, which is just a tier below some of the other plays that I've taken. So I still think that there's value there, but perhaps a little bit of a better line shopping you do in terms of trying to find a more accurate player. How do I feel about Scotty's odds of going for back-to-back wins? I think he's going to win. So yeah, that probably answers your question. I think that if you could get him at like plus anything, I would probably take it at this point. And I think most sportsbook have him at minus money. So maybe not the best bet at like minus 150 or anything. And yeah, everything's great about it. Not just his putting and recovery. He's been this good for a long time now. So yeah, no one's doubting that he's the GOAT. He said, Rory's at 7.5 fairways. He's horrible, but 7.5 seems too low. Yeah, those ones are tough for me, Michael, because they are very inaccurate drivers. So like Chris Goddard, for example, he's at 7.5. They've got a few other guys that spray it off the tee at that same exact number. You might think that that number is a little bit too low, but for somebody that is a sprayer off the tee, it's far from a given that they're going to go over that sort of thing. So it's a little bit tough for me. I normally stay away from those sort of bets myself, but yeah, it's not something I normally have the most success with. So stay away from that. He said he hit 10 today. Just to give you some feedback on that, does not matter. Hitting 10 today literally means jack shit. If you're using that for your analysis and as like a reason for why you're betting people, you're going to get smoked, man. Like there's a reason why they give you the last fives on the sports books. It's going to send you the wrong direction more often than it's going to help you. If you're going to use anything, look at the season-long stats on the PGA Tour, and then also look at the last 24 rounds. Last 24 rounds is as short-sighted as I would look, by the way. Like there's a reason why over the last few months, I have not been looking at in-tournament stats nearly as much as maybe what I did to start this year. And I found more success over this last month and a half, 2 months than I've had the rest of the year because I've just been relying on players' baselines, right? 24 rounds is, again, as short-sighted as I would go because it gives you a decent sense for how they're playing recently, but it's not like one round or the last two events, which is only going to give you negative feedback there. So again, I'm not trying to be like a dick. I'm just trying to help you out with your process, right? Help you improve stuff. How they played round one, it's meaningless. It literally means nothing. Like somebody that made 8 birdies today, that does not influence me whatsoever for how they're going to play tomorrow. Like you could argue that there could be slight tweaks that can be made based on the round one projection, but anytime somebody like references that as a reason for why they're playing something, they overblow it, right? Like it might be a slight little boost in their direction, but people make it out to like, oh, they made 8 birdies today, they're doing it again tomorrow. Like, no, that's not how golf works. He said Morikawa 4.5 birdies. I could get behind that one. Again, that was one of the ones I was kind of looking at 4.5. Harry Hall was the first one that really caught my eye, though. He said he literally placed Spawn and Bhatia fairways and young greens before my video. There you go. Yeah, those were ones that I posted on my Patreon page. So I guess we were thinking alike there. He said, you like DeChambeau for the over 4.5 holes won? Yeah, so I'll talk about the live golf stuff real quick. I'm not entering any live golf for the first few days until they get the stroke play for Sunday where they're going to be playing all their own ball and doing their own stuff. this match play stuff is all mumbo jumbo. And like every once in a while, if you really deep dived it and you tried to find value, you might be able to find a lean that makes sense, man. But holes won in a match play format is as much of a toss up as you could possibly think of. I mean, you're going to get some people that play way above their heads in the matchup format, like the Europeans, like Ian Poulter's like freaking infamous for doing that. But like Bryson versus Lee Westwood, when I first brought up the board, I will admit that was the one that caught my eye, Swope, was Bryson versus Lee Westwood. But then I remembered every event that they've had match play for that I've ever done props for has always been utter shit because it's all like 50-50 props. The average holes won for one of these matches is about 4 per round. So for somebody like Bryson versus Westwood, that's a little bit of a bigger talent discrepancy. Like that's why they have it at 4.5 as opposed to being at 4. But I've, at least for me, again, certain people are better at other things than others. So like if you found success doing these matchups, then by all means continue to do them if you have found that success. But kind of like Birdie or better matchups, man, it's just stay away from me. It's just not anything I'm gonna bet. And yeah, it's he is probably the best value out of those, but still something I'm not going to mix in myself. What's up, Luke? His thoughts on Hovland for the over at 4.5 birdies? Yeah, so that's one of the players I'd be willing to take. In fact, if he was on Prize Picks at 4.5, I would play that. But they don't have his lineup, or at least I don't think they had his lineup. Let's double check that one. So yeah, he's up 5 birdies actually on Prize Picks. That's probably where he should be. So let's actually go back over here. Is he at 4.5? So he is, but he's 0.85x. Yeah, if you're getting him at minus 125, I could get behind that 100%. He's an above average birdie maker. I think the average is going to be about that 5 per round. Clear value in my opinion there. Burns versus Novak on the birdie matchup. Yeah, man, birdie matchups are a no-go for me. I think that they're just kind of degenerate plays, if I'm going to be honest. Same kind of thing with those match play bets. Like they're just at best 50-50 prospects. And if anything, I'm normally looking at unders on these matchups that have the 0.5 on them, because you got to remember, if they tie, then the under ends up hitting. So which one were you looking at? You're looking at the one with Novak, right? Burns versus Novak. Yeah, Burns does make a good amount more birdies per round than an Andrew Novak does. But even then, you've got to ask yourself, is it close to a whole birdie per round? Because you need it to be like a birdie per round if you're going to take them on this 0.5 matchup. Right, you've got the minus 0.5 right there. Then all that tie equity, which is a massive on a birdie prop, by the way. It's not like strokes where you're at like 69 to 72 strokes. Like you're usually making 4 or 5 birdies per round. In this case, probably like 5 to 6 birdies per round because of how easy the golf course is playing. Even in that scenario, your tie equity between those two players is like, I don't know, I can't give it like an exact number, but 10 to 15%, we'll say, give or take, something in that range. All of that 10 to 15% is a loss with these 0.5. So it's something that I've ran the numbers on the Sims on enough to know that these props are just sucker bets 99% of the time. And this is why when I'm looking at these birdie or better matchups, man, I'm almost always only looking at unders. And, you know, it doesn't mean that there's always going to be under value, but if we can find a matchup between two people that are pretty close in their birdie or better percentage, then with that extra 0.5, that's normally the better side to take. But just kind of like from the overhead view here, it doesn't look like any of these would be value towards the under, but is normally what I'm looking at in that category. How do I feel about Keegan for the under at 68.5? So yeah, he could have a slightly worse than average day and cover that. I believe it was 16 of the 30 players today shot -3 or better. Of the field, I'm not sure how many actually shot -2 or better, but I'm assuming it was 18 to maybe 20 that were able to get that job done. I think that's a decent lean. Like I'd say 68.5 for a lot of players in this field. I'd be willing to take for the under, but unfortunately, Prize Picks Underdog is not giving us that many to work with. So in fact, right, like Keegan's at 68 over here on the Prize Pick side. So yeah, 68.5 for somebody with decent form, I can get behind. In fact, just kind of going, and here's what I'll say about that. And I need to add the asterisk again. And I gave this asterisk earlier. So maybe you're just joining us. That's if there's live clean in place. If there's live clean in place, I can get behind that sort of an under at 68.5. If there's not, then no. I actually think it would probably be value in the other direction. So I'm holding off on strokes bets until that happens. That's why we didn't really break down this board as much as before. But like, let's assume it's live clean in place. I just want to give you guys like an idea of what I'm looking at. But guys like Hideki would be value for an under. Guys like a Harris English would be value towards the under at 68.5. Who else? And a lot of these guys towards the top, yeah, they have it 68 or lower in terms of their strokes line. But like maybe a few players like that, I'd be looking at potentially using at that stage because they could have a worse than average round. Again, only -2, but the -2.75 scoring average in cover for us. So I'm going to wait until we get that news on Lift Clean in Place before making that final decision. But yeah, like, especially on a Keegan, that would make a whole lot of sense if that is the case. And it's a big if, right? Because if not, it could be value in the opposite direction. AR says, hey, Luke, you're thinking about Bobby for plus 100 over Justin Thomas. It seems inflated. Can I deep dive? So yeah, that's one of those matchups. Thank goodness we're getting someone in chat with us, because I didn't see much value before when you're going through them. That was one of the ones that I was kind of looking at, but I decided to stay away from. So you're considering the Bobby Mack side. And JT, by the way, if we take a look at that one, he had a horrendous day, at least with the shots gained metrics. And he had a good day overall with the score. Like, don't get me wrong there. But what I mean with like a horrendous shots gained profile is it was all short game. So if we go to Justin Thomas, he actually lost strokes off the tee. He lost strokes on approach, which you'd say, how the hell do you shoot -6? If you lost in both ball striking categories, well, it's because you gained nearly 5 strokes around the green and putting. So yeah, I would say if you're fading that kind of a shots gained profile, I'm okay with it. And if you go to McIntyre, it was kind of the opposite, right? He gained across all 4 categories most significantly between the off the tee and the approach play. So yeah, at plus money, I mean, you're getting better odds than this, right? The odds you're getting on DraftKings are what, plus 105? If you're getting, actually, you're only getting plus 100 on your sportsbook. I thought it was plus 110, plus 115 that you were getting there. I don't know. I feel like I'm looking for that plus 110, that plus 115 before I bet it. But that is the side I'd be leaning towards. He said, all good. You appreciate it. Just wasn't sure if round 1 was something to reference. Absolutely not. No, you don't want to do that, man. It's only an 18-hole sample size, and it's something that I go through a little bit more extensively for DFS. But everyone loves playing the guys that played really good in round 1. And hardly ever, when you look at the round 2 showdown optimal lineup, is it all guys that played well in round 1. Like, usually there's one guy that played well in round 1 that you also see in the really good lineup in round number 2. But it's usually guys that were either average to below average that you see in that GPP winning lineup. So, and I know we're talking props here, so it's a little bit different, but that same idea about the volatility, the kinds of ups and downs that you have in the sport, you've got to embrace for the prop side as well. So that's why I like to zoom out a little bit more. And like, for example, like there are guys for the overs on fairways that maybe struggled in round 1 that are value for round number 2 because of the sports books. Just like the public out there, they overreact a bit, right? They see the round 1 stuff, and sometimes they adjust stuff a little bit too much. You don't want to get caught doing that. It's one of the bigger edges that I've had in betting props over the years, is having a more zoomed out approach. Like, just kind of knowing that golf's crazy. People wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and not to hold it against them. And oftentimes you'll find some pretty good value there. And yeah, I knew it was the 2-ball. You're good on that one. And yeah, plus 100 though. Try and line shop that. If you can get the plus 105, it's okay. But plus 100, you're getting those 5 points less. Don't do that, right? Like, don't let the sportsbook tax you on that. Like, just find that slightly better number if you can. What's going on, Hooves? Welcome to the chat. Is that oatmeal slathered on Bobby Mack's arms? Kind of looks like it, huh? He's Scottish, that's for sure. They're a little pasty from Scotland, but we love them. They love their whiskey. They've got the best golf courses in the world. And we'll take him, even though they look like ghosts out there at times. He said between Hovland at over 4.5, Decky under 68.5, and Young over 11.5, which would be my favorite 2 you can't pick? Ooh, I mean, I'd have to say that Cam Young has to be one of those, because that's the only one of those 3 I've actually bet at this point. But between the top 2, it for sure be the Hovland one then, because we don't know about Lift Clean in Place yet. So that's a huge deal to me if you guys can't tell. Like, the Lift Clean in Place shit, here's why. If you take unders on strokes tonight and you wake up tomorrow and they don't give the Lift Clean in Place announcement, you're cooked. You're losing your money. I guarantee you that, okay? If you take unders on strokes and they don't do that, you enter a bunch of different slips, you're cooked. You're losing money tomorrow. If you enter these other categories where that's not a big deal and they give the no Lift Clean in Place, you don't got to sweat it, right? It's not a big deal if they don't do that. If they're boneheaded, they want to make these players play it down because they nuked the golf course round 1 and they're scared that the members might get a little bit upset about it. Don't get screwed by that, right? So yeah, I'd go Hovland and I go with the Cam Young one there, man, just for ease of mind. Like, I don't know. For me, that would maybe impact me more than most people. It would legitimately start my day horribly. I'd be pissed off. I'd be like, this stupid ass tour, these people that run, I have no idea what they're doing. I mean, it'd be the rambling of all rambling, right? But if we don't do that, then that's not even a possibility. So I'm staying away from that stuff. You said you love the bloke. Yep. He's a. By the way, they've got some great lingo over there, just like you Philly people. You Philly people have got some good lingo too. And you're looking at Straka versus McNeely. I was kind of thinking about that one too. Plus 130. I have to say, I think that's better odds than what they had over here. So look at this. Yeah, he's minus 120. Yeah, dude, plus 130. Yes, please. If I could get that versus McNeely, I would enter that in a heartbeat because that's a prime example of an overreaction, right? Like Straka was the worst player in the field today. I mean, no one can really contest that. But at the same time, heading into this event, he was about average with his form heading in. It's not like he was losing strokes to the field. He's got 2 wins on the season. He was top 10 in the FedEx Cup rankings before the playoffs. Like, yeah, that's plus 130 is disrespectful. So let me know what sportsbook that is, Sava. I kind of wish I had access to it. Because if they're posting plus 130s on head-to-heads on like Straka versus McNeely, like I can't imagine what else they have posted. Like that's just such an egregious line. He said, when do I think they'll announce the lift cleanup place? It'll be as play is starting. So that's kind of their MO. It's what they go with that. They won't announce it ahead of time. They only announce it just after play starts, or maybe just before. I think they did it just before today. So probably the same thing tomorrow. So that's personally why I'm kind of sitting it out on those two categories is because, I mean, we can tell ourselves ahead of time, like, yeah, they got an inch of rain today. They should have lift clean in place tomorrow, but they should have lift clean in place. We don't know. Like they've made some dumbass decisions. If you can't tell, I've been hurt by that kind of shit before. Like I've had the tour just make these dumbass decisions that you would never expect them to make, literally lose me money in multiple circumstances. So like I've been there before. I guess that's why I'm so adamant about like giving you guys that PSA is because like it happens more often than it should. So yeah, tomorrow morning, probably about when play starts, though. And he said Bet365. Yeah, man, they're infamous for those shitty lines. So the only thing I'll say about them, Sava, is that I can't play them in Florida. But whenever you are winning better on Bet365, they limit you in like the first couple weeks. So I guess if you have multiple outs on Bet365, it can be pretty sweet. Or just prime your account the right way. Like bet some like, I don't know, Steelers Super Bowl bets or something that's got no chance to actually cash. And by the way, that's a Steeler fan saying that. So I'm not talking shit about the Steelers, but realistically, they're not winning with Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback. He absolutely blows. So yeah, maybe you bet on like the Steelers to win the Super Bowl or something. And then you throw them off the scent, right? Because if you bet something silly like that, then they know that they think they know that you're not a good bettor. And then you slam them on the golf matchups. That's may or may not have done that before at a few of my different accounts, but that's all we got. And he said, yeah, lift clean in place is shit. I'm right there with you. I think it's not really legit golf when they play that way. And yeah, he said the Scheffler special with the high ball flight, man, he's going to win by like 5 this week, huh? Based on how he started. That's all I've got, guys. Best of luck. Check out the Patreon page for all of the content that I'm taking for tomorrow. I'll see you guys with around 3 live streams out there tomorrow night.